Hello, YouTube land. This is Brenton Sawin coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky, the Bluegrass State. If anyone has a story that they would like to share here on the show, they can contact me at brentonsawin@gmail.com. If you'd like to contribute to help with the show, you can go to a link in the description. It's PayPal Me. It's super easy to use, and every contribution is very much appreciated. Today, I have something really cool that I want to share with you. This fellow Art is from Kentucky, and this is in Grant County. Uh, yeah, I really like the Kentucky Bigfoot encounters because they, are kind of close to home and stuff. So I kind of prefer those a little bit. I guess I'm biased in some aspects, but anyway, we have Art with us today, and he's going to share some very interesting information with us today about something that happened when he was a kid and some other stuff too. So anyway, hello Art, how you doing?
I'm doing just fine.
All right, man. If you would, Art, introduce yourself, and if I guess you could tell us kind of where you lived when you were a kid when this happened, and then get into your Bigfoot encounter and stuff.
Well, my name is Arthur Bagwell the Fourth. I live in Grant County, Kentucky. At the time, my family lived on a house on Chipman Ridge off Heacon Road. We lived there for quite a few years, and we were renting the place from a man named Lloyd Anglin, God rest his soul. We had cows there. We had all kinds of animals. We had chickens. We had bannies. We had dog, cats all over the place.
Right. And what county was this?
Grant.
Okay, it was Grant County. I was just making sure I
Yes.
had that right.
Yes.
And Grant County is it south of Lexington? Kind of south.
North of Lexington.
Oh, okay. All right.
I'm about 30 minutes from Florence.
Okay. All right. I got you. I was trying to picture where that was. I'm not up on all the counties, but all right. Grant County's north. All right. Cool.
Well, this was back in the summer of 1975. My older sister, now we were the last house on this road. There was a barn right across the road from us. That was the first barn. Then down the road was another barn. Then a third barn further down the road, and the road went into the woods. Well, my older sister and I, we were riding our bicycles on this one particular day. It was a Friday. And we stopped short of the woods, and we were taking a little break, and my older sister gets this weird look on her face, and she says, "Arthur, do fir trees move?" And I looked at her and I said, "Laura, it's a tree. They don't move." And she looks at me, she says, "Well, that one's moving." I turn around and I look where she's pointing, and to all the world, to me, it looked like a dead cedar tree. It was that reddish-brown color. Until it turned around and looked at us. Then we could see it. We saw its face. It had like the apish face, big arms, big shoulders, big chest, and it just looked at us. And then it grunted at us. It made the sound was like, "Ugh," at us.
That's fascinating.
And we took this as, get out of here. So we lit out of it. I mean, it scared us half to death, this thing.
Yeah.
We didn't know what we were looking at. I mean, I'm 8 years old. What the devil's an 8-year-old supposed to think,
Right.
Well, we went back to the house, and we told Mom what we saw. And Mom looked at us, and she said, "Well, wait till your father gets home. He should be here in about 30 minutes or so." Well, Dad showed up about 30 minutes later, and Mr. Anglin, our landlord, was with him. And we told, both Laura and I told him what we saw. And he says, "Oh, you're imagining things. Just your imagination, kid." Mr. Anglin says, "Now hold on, Mac. There's been some strange things going down around here for the past few days, and I've been finding some of my calves mutilated." He turned and looks at us and asks, "Where did you see this?" So we took him. Dad, Mr. Anglin, and his son Joe, we took them to where we saw this thing. And at the start, we started looking around in this field, and Joe Anglin says, I found a track. Well, Dad looked at this track, and he says, what in the world is running around here in bare feet? Mr. Anglin just kind of shook his head. Dad reached in his pocket, pulls out a tape measure. And he measures his footprint. It was 20 inches long, 8.5 inches wide. Then Joe calls out again. He says, I found another footprint. Well, Mr. Anglin, they looked at him and they said, well, this looked right. This is a step. So Dad measured it from the heel of one footprint to the toe of the other, almost 3 feet from foot to foot. And my dad just kind of got this weird look on his face. He says, what in the world is running around here like this, with a stride like this? And Mr. Anglin just kind of shakes his head and says, we're going to move the cows. Move the cows. Well, he left that, after he did that, and he did a few other things on the property, he left. Well, later that night, nice night, balmy night, we're out, all three of us kids are out playing. Mom and Dad are sitting on the porch. The cows start mooing. Something was making them nervous. Our dog, Prince, he's a big border collie. He went in the house, stuffed himself behind the couch, and would not come out. And the cats disappeared. Then out of the gully came this sound, this absolutely horrid sound that made your hair stand up. It was a howling scream. It came up out of that gully. And Mom and Dad got us kids in the house. And this went on for 2 nights straight. At times, I swear, it was right next to the house. This screaming howl. I just cannot imitate this sound. And this went on for 2 nights straight, and then it stopped.
So if you were to try to say what the sound was, what would you say the combination of stuff would be to kind of get close to it?
I couldn't even begin to even think about that. I mean, we've heard coyotes yip. We've heard screech owls, barn owls, dogs howling in the distance.
Right.
Squirrels do make a sound, but that's too small of a sound to be heard. Not like this.
So was it kind of like a roar that was like a lion type roar, but it had a scream? It was kind of humanoid. And that's the best way I could describe it, as a screaming howl. Yeah, that's
the only way I can describe it.
You know, it makes me think of like the I don't know if you ever heard of the Mongolian throat singers or the Tuvian throat singers, who they sing and they have these overtone notes, so that they basically will have a note that they're making with their voice, and then they have these notes that go over the top of it, and it's called overtones. So they're making more than one note at a time. And the Bigfoot howls sometimes seem kind of like that, like they have a underlying roar, but they have a overtone scream. And it's quite fascinating in a way when you think about it. But I actually have for quite a few years practiced doing this Tuvian throat singing with the overtone notes, and I got pretty good at it too. I'm not going to do it right now, but you know, maybe I'll make a video on it. But it's kind of weird. I mean, it's strange because you have a underlying, like a bass note, but then you have these overtone notes that you can even move around, like in scales and stuff. And I've
Could it
gotten
have been maybe? Could it been maybe? Could the screaming howl we heard is like one screaming, one howling?
um I mean, it could be, but I think that it's
Well,
one creature. I think they have a vocal system that's beyond what humans have, and they're able to make more than one tone. And one of the reasons I say that is that Ron Morehead, when he had gotten these, he collected a lot of different recordings, but there was one of the recordings that was like a whistle, and the whistling was very different sounding. It was kind of weird, kind of a sounding whistle. And he had a Navy expert in voice, kind of stuff. I don't remember exactly what you call him or not, but
mm-hmm.
he was an expert. He was a naval guy who was in intelligence and stuff like that. He was an expert in these voice kind of things like this. And he said this whistling, he said, was not made with a lip, like making the whistle. He said this whistling sound was actually made with the voice box mechanism of some kind. It was so basically this thing could open its mouth and whistle from its voice box, not making the shape of its lips to whistle. You know what I'm saying? So that's a
Yeah.
very unique kind of thing, and I thought that was
Well, to
really
it, like
interesting.
it's like I said, to an 8-year-old, that's the best I can describe it, and I know that it's scared. It scared all of us.
Now, when it was
And
standing there, can you describe the height and kind of give us a description of what this thing looked like?
well, my
Hair.
dad stood six. My dad stood 6'5". This thing could have easily towered over him very easily. We could see its hands, and its hands were huge. I mean, absolutely, it would have taken maybe 2.5 of my hands to fit inside of its hand. It looked that big. It was covered in reddish brown hair, kind of long, and when it looked at us, we could see its face. It was kind of apish look. It had the squash nose like an ape would, like a gorilla, and we could see its eyes. It's, if I remember right, its eyes were gold colored. It looked kind of a goldish color. And we couldn't see its ears, but this thing, all it did was grunt at us.
Right.
It just went, and we lit out of there. And it did not come after us either. We took off, and it did not come after us. I think I'm not sure why, but it probably just wanted us to get the hell out of there.
Well, when I was thinking about it, I thought maybe that the thing was working on dealing with this farm. If this guy's had cattle and stuff like that coming up missing, it made me wonder if he was passing through. You all approached, and it was standing there still, trying to look like a tree, and he noticed that you were looking at it, and then it let you know. Because one of the reasons I think that is because I had a hunter friend that did a lot of hunting. He had these hunting dogs, and that kind of thing. He was a kind of professional hunter. But
Yeah.
he was out in the woods one day, kind of looking around for places to go hunting, and he ran across something that looked like a tree, like you're talking about. And this Sasquatch had really long hair, and it was standing there really still, but it was rocking back and forth, trying. He said it looked like it was mimicking, like it was swaying in the wind.
No, this one was standing perfectly still.
Right.
It was standing still, and at the angle that I was looking at this thing at, it made it look like a tree.
Right. Yeah.
But then it turned around and looked at us, and it didn't do anything mean or hateful or nasty to us.
Yeah.
It just like stared at us.
Yeah.
And we took off.
And it was on. Did it kind of come off as if like, go on, get out of here, I'm busy?
It looked at us like it was annoyed.
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking, because there's this other fellow, man, who he was saying that these people were taking him out through this little valley area that the Sasquatch are on a regular basis, and they know where they are, they know how they hide and all that kind of stuff. And he said that they would stop and say, "Okay, look over there." And he said, I would look, and stare, and I was like, I don't see nothing. And he said I would look away for a second, and I'd look back, and he said the bushes and stuff were gone. And that's why when you said that it looked like a tree, that's really intriguing to me, because I think they know they can stop and stand still and look like a tree, or look like, there's a lot of different stories that I've collected over the the years here, that these things were mistaken for a tree or a bush, or what, if they were squatted down, or however, a stump. It's incredible, the camouflage capability that they have. But now, did the guy ever tell you any more about the cattle missing?
All he said was he found them. And he said that the day before the day before this encounter, he was down there talking to Dad to find out if there was any animals Dad didn't know about around, like coyotes or something, because he had found at least 3 of his calves mutilated. He said it looked like something just ripped the damn thing apart. And he said the one thing that was missing on all of them, were its hindquarters.
Okay.
He says that their front legs were broken and the hindquarters were missing. He could not find, all he found was half of them.
Huh.
And he was wondering if Dad might have seen like coyotes or anything around that, that might have attacked calves. And Dad says, I have not heard any coyote howling. I haven't seen any coyote sign or anything around here.
So do you think maybe they were preferring the hindquarters?
I guess. I mean, Mr. Anglin was kind of perturbed, because these 3 calves came from 3 of his prize cows.
Yeah.
And they were bull calves, which for him were worth a lot of money.
Yeah, imagine. Goodness.
And he finds them like this.
Nice. Wow. And in like 1975 time frame, making a living, it was, you worked for your living, and economy was okay and all, I think, at that time, but it wasn't great. You had to struggle for your living, and farmers were on the verge of being stamped out. People who raised crops and and raised animals and things like that. It was on the verge of becoming corporate. So he was probably really struggling with this idea of whether or not he could keep doing this raising cows. Wow, that's sad in a way. So did he say that this was happening quite regular, or?
No, he said, he said that's the first time he's ever had anything like that happen to any of his cattle down there. He had that property there in Grant County. He had another his farm, his main farm, up there in Boone County. His main farm. I mean, he lived out in the boondocks,
Right.
and he did very well for himself. He had several properties that he had cattle on. He raised Black Angus cattle. He had rental properties too. Man survived World War II.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, this Mr. Anglin was no nonsense, tough as nails, toughest man you'd ever want to meet. Yet here he is. He's beside himself. He has no idea what's going on. And then we see this thing, and I guess he kind of put two and two together.
Right. And so your dad, when he was measuring these footprints and stuff like that, what'd he say to you about it?
He just stood there. He just stood there scratching his head. We had seen this thing. He could not play it down. But to his dying day, he would never, ever admit to anyone that he had seen the tracks of a Bigfoot and he had heard this creature.
Yeah.
He would never admit it, not to his dying day. I mean, he would try to explain it off as a bear or something. Problem is, there are no bears that I know of in Grant County.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you know what you saw, so you know, since he didn't,
we knew what we saw.
Yeah, and you know, since he didn't see it straight out, you know, that's understandable in a way. But you and your sister, you know, when you came across this creature and you're sitting there and you're looking at it, and you're thinking, okay, that kind of looks like a tree, and then it turns and it looks at you. Obviously, you were scared. Can you kind of give us a description?
That's an understatement.
Yeah. Can you kind of give us a description of the size of this thing, width, breadth?
I know that this thing was standing next to my dad, who was 6'5". If my dad was standing right next to it, this thing would have been at least 3 feet taller than him.
My goodness.
At least 3 feet taller. He was way taller than Dad. Huge shoulders. My dad could have, big man that he was, he could have stood in front of it, and its shoulders would be a foot on either side of his shoulders.
Right. And you know how I can kind of help you prove that is that if anyone listening was to go rent a ghillie suit and could get it any color they want to, and you go out to parks or whatever where people ride bikes and things like that, try to one time get mistaken for a tree. You know what I mean? I might get mistaken for a bush, but in a fat bush and stuff like that, it's like a pile of stuff or whatever. But being mistaken for a tree is a whole different ball game. It's like, is that a tree? Because listen, I had this one guy come on, man. He was the guy who played with the Bigfoot when he was a little kid and stuff, but he had another encounter later in life where the thing roared at him, but he was mistaking it for a tree. He thought it was a tree up there, and he was looking around for what he was thinking was there, but all he kept seeing was this tree that he thought was a burnt stump, like a big tree that got hit by lightning or something. And so I believe you on that. So from that point there, is there any more like Bigfoot stuff?
The the only thing I can tell you is about the howling scream that came up out of the gullies for 2 nights straight, and then everything stopped, and we never saw it again. We moved out of there in the spring of '77, and I've personally, I've never been back down there since.
Right.
That experience sticks in my head because, number one, it scared the living daylights out of me, and number two, it was the only time I ever beat my older sister on a bicycle.
Yeah, no, I thought that was pretty cool too. You told me the other day you're saying that. Yeah.
Yeah, that sticks it, but that experience kind of sticks in my head. I drive a semi-truck now. Been driving for one company here for the last 16 years. I've had encounters with this creature on 2 other occasions, but it's run across the road in front of me. So I really couldn't give you any description on it, only that I could just see it barely out the side of just outside the headlights. I could see something running, and it could clear the road in 3 steps.
Right.
But I knew what it was.
Yeah. Did it seem huge? Did it seem big to you?
Oh, these 2 were big. One was in Ohio, South Fork Lake area, because I remember this because I was passing through there coming from Pittsburgh. And another time was in North Carolina. I was in the mountains, and I saw it run across the road in front of me. And that was a couple years ago. That one was a couple years ago. The one I saw in Ohio, that was back in 2004.
Yeah. You know, my sister, when I was a kid, she said that she saw her and my stepmom, when they were in Ohio, they saw one cross the road. So I always knew there was something real about this Bigfoot thing, just because I know she wouldn't lie about it. But do you think most truckers who do this driving and trucking throughout the country, through all these different states, do you think most of them would probably
I would
see?
say probably they probably had encounters, but you probably never hear about it because they're probably just attributed to fatigue or something.
Yeah, or
but they were just seeing a known animal and.
Or think a human ran across the road, maybe? Or what do you think?
Do what now? Do what now?
Do you think maybe they would think a human ran across the road?
That's quite possible. I couldn't tell you either way.
But in your opinion, if you were a trucker and you drove on a regular basis through all these different places, do you think you would eventually run across a creature crossing the road, one of these Bigfoots?
No doubt. Absolutely no doubt.
That'd be an interesting study to do, wouldn't it?
I mean, given the fact that some of the places I drive into are very squatchy looking, as it were, to quote Bobo.
Yeah.
I would honestly have to say yes, that there have probably been drivers that have had encounters with these creatures, driving all over the country like they do, especially the Pacific Northwest.
Right.
But drivers don't normally talk about stuff like this.
Right. Yeah, and I understand why.
I don't mean to cut our conversation short, but I'm at the warehouse right now, and I need to get to work.
All right, buddy, and I thank you very much. Hold on for just a second. Anyway, everybody out there in YouTube land, thank you for watching. God bless, and we'll see you all in the next video. Bye.